Welcome back, guys. Say anything about my hair and I'll find you. So I've been using the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro for about like a month now, and I know I'm very, very late to the party with this review, and I'm sorry about that. Trust me, I have my reasons, but I think that the time I spent playing this thing over the past month or so has just given me more experience to talk about in this review. I've been a big fan of Retroid ever since they released the 3 close to 2 years ago, and hardware issues and their weird release schedule aside, I've really liked most of their products. But even though I did enjoy most of their products, and one even ended up on my favorite handhelds of 2023 list last year, I was getting kind of bored of their lineup. The 2S was a refresh of the 2, and I did actually really like it, but we've already seen this design before. And the Flip, while exciting in concept, in execution was actually more of a disappointment. The 2S was a good value at $100, but the internals were nothing exciting. They were a little worse than the 3 Pluses. And the Flip had the exact same internals as the 3 Plus, which made the already disappointing device even more disappointing. So going into this, I was hoping the 4, specifically 4 Pro, would give me a new experience that I hadn't seen from Retroid like 4 times before. And we'll get into that in a second, but it definitely did. First, let's go over the specs. So since the 4 is pretty much just an upgraded version of the Pocket 3 Plus, I'll be comparing the specs of the 3 Plus to the 4, or 4 Pro more specifically, just because this is similar design, similar specs. I just thought it would be easy that way. So the Retroid Pocket 4 uses a Dimensity 900 processor with a G68 GPU, while the 4 Pro uses a Dimensity 1100 processor with an 8-core CPU and a G77 GPU, compared to the 3 Plus, which uses the infamous T618 processor and only has a 6-core CPU and a Mali G52 GPU, which we had seen in several other devices at that point, so we're already seeing big performance gains in just the specs. The base 4 has the same amount of RAM as the 3 Plus, 4 gigabytes, but obviously with the upgraded CPU, GPU, whatever, it's gonna perform better. The Pro comparably has 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot, and guarantees at the very least that Wii games and Gamecube games, most of them, will run really well. Both the base and Pro models of the 4 have 128 gigabytes of internal storage and a 4.7-inch 750 by 1334p LCD touchscreen, which is the same as the 3 Plus, and is again their weird aspect ratio that they keep going with. I wish they would just upgrade the screen at some point. I kind of wish this was like a 1080p display, but it still looks really nice, so there isn't really much I can complain about. Both the 4 and 4 Pro do 720p video out via the mini HDMI port on the top, which is the same as the 3 Plus, but only the 4 Pro can do 1080p video out through the USB-C port on the bottom. And if you're wondering, yes, the 4 Pro does work on the Odin 2 dock. Both models have Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2, which are both an upgrade from the 3 Plus, as well as the 5000 mAh battery compared to the 4500 mAh battery on the 3 Plus. Both models use Hall effect sticks and analog triggers, which are a big upgrade since the 3 Plus had digital triggers and these weird sticks that are like extruding. Everything else is pretty much the same. It weighs more and the dimensions are slightly different, enough so that the 3 Plus grips don't work on the 4 and 4 Pro, but it's not noticeable if you're not looking for it. It comes in 6 colors compared to the 8 of the 3 Plus, but the 3 Plus had a lot more basic colors compared to the 4's kind of more interesting colors, so I don't think you're really missing out on much. It's not as much of a downside as you may think it will be. It's still 6 variations to choose from. Moving on to hardware, this thing feels nice. I got the icy blue version, and I have to assume that has at least a little bit of an impact on how this thing feels, since it's using translucent plastic compared to the plain ones on the 3 Plus, and they already do feel a little different, but it's not incredibly noticeable. It still feels smooth and looks really cool. I do think that me choosing this color is the reason that mine kind of got to me so late compared to everybody else. But damn, these translucent colors look so good in person. I kind of wish I went with the red, but the blue looks so cool. The face buttons are definitely bigger and feel nicer. They don't feel as kind of tic-tac face buttons as they did on the 3 Plus. I still yearn for the clicky buttons that appeared on the 3. But compared to the 3 Plus, the 4's buttons feel really good. The D-pad is the same, if a bit bigger, and the aforementioned Hall effect sticks feel really nice to use compared to the 3 Plus's extruding joysticks. I'm not sure what to call these. These are Nintendo Switch style joysticks. These feel a lot better. None of this to say is that the 3 Plus felt bad or anything. I think that device felt really good, but just comparatively, this thing feels a lot better. And all the upgrades they made to the hardware were really good. Another very nice upgrade I previously mentioned is the analog triggers. It always kind of confused me when the 3 Plus had digital triggers, and I was even more confused when the 2S released after that with analog triggers. But now we have them and they feel great, especially on a device that's capable of playing a lot of GameCube games, which use the analog triggers a lot. The travel distance is long and feels really good to push down on, especially since they feel responsive. I doubt they are, but they feel like it. It's a great addition and I'm glad they finally put it in. I kind of wish they did it with the 3 Plus, just because I feel like a lot of people looked to that device for like GameCube emulation at the very least, but I'm glad they finally have it on here. All that to say, if you have the 3 Plus already, all these designs that were made won't make the device feel super radically different, but they're noticeable enough that it will feel like a way better experience than the 3 Plus. And if you're coming in as a newcomer, these all will just be much better than if you started with the 3 Plus. Before we move on to my thoughts about the software on this thing, I want to touch on a few hardware issues that made reviewing this device a way longer and more difficult process than it actually needed to be. So the first issue I ran into was caused because I was sitting in my school's auditorium because I had a free period, and when the bell rang, I stuffed this thing into my backpack, and unbeknownst to me, one of the thumbstick caps had fallen off. And I didn't even know that was possible, because in my unboxing video, I was like, oh, I don't think you can remove these. You can. And I found out the hard way because I lost one of them. I tried to look for it. It was nowhere to be found. It was annoying. I couldn't find it. I was obviously very annoyed that the joystick cap was gone, but I mean, it wasn't the end of the world considering that this thing uses very similar joysticks to the Odin 2. So I could just take that off and use them on while I wait for a replacement. I did email Retroid asking for a replacement and just switched other joysticks, and that was that for a while. But then around a week later, I was lying on my bed, that one right there, playing Pikmin 2, like any respectable man would be. And out of nowhere, the right trigger just gave out. Like it just flopped over and wouldn't stay up. It wasn't always pressing like in the software, but it made the entire device just completely unplayable. I emailed them again because they never responded to my previous email, and I knew this was a problem I couldn't work around on my own. So they responded by saying they send me a new back with new triggers and replacement caps for the joysticks, which I was very appreciative of and still am. Thank you, Retroid. I appreciate that a lot. But Jeb_Leebs on Twitter replied to my tweet about it and said, maybe the spring came loose. And I thought, I didn't think about that. So I opened it up and turns out the spring actually did come loose. So I adjusted it, which was actually a very difficult process, getting the spring and everything back into place. But once I adjusted it, it fixed it. Until a few days later when the left trigger suffered the exact same fate. I thought I could fix it the same way just by opening it up and fixing the position of the spring. But opening it up, the spring that's supposed to hold the thing together just broke. Like the stem of it just fell off. That I could not work around. And they were already sending me a new back, so there wasn't like I could really do much, but it was a very annoying process having to wait for it because I couldn't play this thing for like a week. Okay, I want to quickly jump in here because I was looking back at my emails for like footage I can put on screen of like when I first emailed them, and it turns out it actually took a lot longer than a week. So the first email I ever sent them about the joystick caps I sent on February 16th, and then they never responded to me. And the second one I sent about the triggers I sent on the 22nd. They responded the next day. They didn't give me a shipping number until March 5th, which was close to 2 weeks after, or like literally 2 weeks after I emailed them. And then that didn't arrive until March 8th. So it took close to a month for anything to even happen. Just wanted to add that. It prevented me from using it and even reviewing it, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. And I wanted to play Pikmin 2 so bad, I moved the save file from this to my Odin 2 and just played it on there. But it was really annoying. I did eventually get the new back in the sticks, and I replaced the original, which was easy enough. And I haven't had any issues since, which is good. But I'm still annoyed that it happened in the first place. I've heard and seen horror stories about Retroid's hardware from other people on this same website. I know Bob Wolf and other people have had issues with Retroid's hardware just failing on them and Retroid's customer support not being very helpful. And I couldn't comment on that personally up until now because that had never happened to me. But now it has. And luckily, I had a good experience with Retroid's customer support. I mean, they didn't respond to my first email, but they responded to the second one. They sent me a new back and new joystick caps, and the problem hasn't come back. So it's been a good experience overall with their customer support. The hardware issues were annoying. I couldn't comment on it before, but now I can because it's heavily impacted my ability to review their product. The first time the trigger spring thing came out could have just been a fluke because I opened it up and put it back in, but the second time, it definitely was not. That thing just broke. Like, I had no input in that. I was not the cause of that. That was just a hardware failure. I appreciate that they sent me a new back for free, and I appreciate how kind of easy the replacement process was and how they sent me all the tools needed, but it happening at all was very, very annoying, especially since it took like a week for that back to get to me, so I couldn't even play anything on there or try to review it within that time span. So now I guess I have to also say be wary of Retroid's hardware when ordering something, because now I've had a poor experience as well, but they fixed it. So I mean, just contact their customer support if you have an issue. I wanted to talk about it because I feel like it would be kind of not necessarily lying, but when I'm reviewing a product, I want to review my experiences, and if I've had a poor experience with it, even if it's been fixed and the company was good with communication, I want to tell you about it. All right. Moving on from user controllable and user non-controllable issues, let's talk about the software. If you've seen or used a Retroid product before, this user interface will not surprise you in the slightest. My 3 Plus refuses to boot for some reason, and I have no idea why, but the only difference from what I can remember from what I've seen in my past footage is the background of the home screen. There really isn't anything different. All of Retroid's products use Android, albeit different varying versions, but the Android home screen on here and the 3 Plus are the exact same. The task manager gives us the same options as before, but now the performance modes actually mean something, because the fans do get noticeably louder when you choose the most power intense option. On the 3 Plus, the most power intense option was the one that the device was set at default before they introduced those options in an update. This one actually has noticeable differences between the options. The interface is just another example of basic Android, but the UI and the interface looks so nice and clean that there really isn't anything I can complain about. They really didn't have to do anything, and they didn't really, which honestly just made the experience better. The Retroid launcher is still the same as before. It's still really nice, but I mean, it looks the exact same as it did on the 2S, the 3 Plus, the Flip, the 3, everything else that had the Retroid launcher on it, it looks the same. And it's really good, but it's nothing different, so there's nothing I can really talk about here. Since there's not much more I can say about software, let's get into what this thing was marketed for, or at least what I bought it for: emulation. So obviously, before I get into this, Yuzu and Citra no longer exist in an official fashion, but I still will be testing them because I put them on here before the lawsuit settlement happened where they had to remove everything officially. But you can still find them in unofficial websites like archive.org or other websites. Please, Nintendo, don't take them down. So if you still want them, you can find them in different places, and I'm still going to be testing them out, but just know Citra website and Yuzu website don't exist anymore. I think Citra is going to be started up again by someone else, but Yuzu is probably gone for the foreseeable future. Or maybe forever. So let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Jumping in here quickly because I feel like it's necessary, something you will notice in the 3DS emulation testing is that these games stutter very frequently, and I don't know why that is. Even with the device at the highest performance settings, using the same emulator that I've used on other devices that I've never had this issue with, I still get these issues, and I'm not sure why that is. So just beware if you use Citra MMJ, or just know you might run into some issues. Also, if you want any indication on how Switch games would run, Mario Wonder runs at about 45 frames per second. So, Switch games aren't really going to run on here. So it's actually really impressive for its price. I like it and think it can play pretty much anything I'd want to play, like 3DS, Wii, Gamecube, anything that and below. It can play really well. Obviously, Switch games don't run that well, but for a device that's $200 and the emulator that it's running is not being updated any longer, I don't think I was expecting it to. It's kind of a cool thing to just test out rather than actually want to use it for Switch emulation, especially since I have a Nintendo Switch. I have all of these PCs that can play it. If you want to play Switch games so bad, buy a Nintendo Switch. So quickly before we conclude this video, you might be wondering why you wouldn't just buy an Odin Lite, since they are the same price or a similar price, and the Odin Lite is bigger and has a bigger battery and better screen. Well, there are a few reasons I want to discuss. One being that the Odin Lite uses a D900 processor, which is the same as the base 4, which let me remind you is $50 less than the Odin Lite, and the Pro has double the RAM at the same price as the Odin Lite. I wouldn't recommend the Odin Lite anymore, especially not with the 4 and 4 Pro being released, but I wanted to compare it seeing as they are pretty much the same price. The 4 and 4 Pro are just better values than the Lite right now, and I don't think the better screen, the better battery are really gonna make up for the better performance you'd get on the Pro at the same price. So to wrap this all up, I really like this thing. Retroid used to be really bad about releasing devices really close to one another, especially with the 3 Plus releasing 2 months after the 3 did, but it seems that now they've worked out a pretty good schedule and are probably the best company for release schedules aside from maybe I. Yeah, they had the Flip and 2S last year, but the Flip was a new form factor that hadn't been perfected yet and still hasn't, and the 2S was just a refresh of their very popular Pocket 2 line. It's been a year and a half since the release of the 3 Plus, and honestly that time without any like direct upgrade or like 3 Plus equivalent device has been really nice. It's given people who bought the 3 Plus time to use their device and time to enjoy it without having to think about, oh, this device is going to get replaced in a month. Especially after I did that with the 3 and got the 3 Plus released. I'm still mad about that, if you can't tell. Sure, the chipset in the base 4 was used in a device released 2 years ago, but it's cheaper now. The device is noticeably better than its predecessor in many ways, and it's been long enough that I don't feel like I'm gonna be gypped off, or I've been gypped off by buying this when I already have a 3 Plus, because it's been long enough that I think an upgrade is warranted. After a year of what felt like nothing but T618 budget devices or chipsets around that, like the T610 and the Retroid Pocket 2S, I'm glad that Retroid has seemingly slowed down their release schedule, and hopefully other companies can learn from that. But what do you guys think? Is there something important I failed to mention? Is there some game or something you aren't sure will work well on here and you want to know if it will? Are you gonna buy one, or do you already have a handheld you're happy with? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.